Today, we are conducting a comprehensive global intelligence briefing, entirely based on a single day's historical dispatches. The source is the American Mercury, printed in Philadelphia. The date is April 20th, 1721. In the spring of 1721, the world was deeply interconnected. News traveled at the speed of a sailing ship, but the reports landing on Philadelphia's docks that week formed a composite picture of a global system facing simultaneous shocks. The briefing covers three primary areas: the collapse of sovereign credit in London, a wave of colonial militarization, and reports of natural disasters across the European continent. Secondary reports detail an international manhunt for high-level financial fugitives and a local case of judicial evasion right here in Pennsylvania. These dispatches trace a network spanning from the British Parliament to the West African coast, and from the plague-stricken ports of France to the Caribbean. The April 20th edition of the Mercury documents how the British Empire was managing a sequence of events that threatened its financial stability at home and its control over the colonies abroad. King George arrived at St. James's Palace after a dangerous delay. Severe winds pinned his ship at sea for days before he reached Margate. Once back in London, the king delivered a formal address to both Houses of Parliament. He opened by citing successes in foreign policy, stating that peace abroad was nearly concluded and the Protestant religion was secure. He then addressed the domestic crisis, using a specific euphemism for the financial disaster: the unhappy turn of affairs. The king issued an urgent mandate to the House of Commons, telling them they must find speedy methods to restore the national credit. This unhappy turn refers to the bursting of the South Sea bubble. Over the previous year, the South Sea Company's stock price had been driven to astronomical heights by speculation before crashing. The collapse wiped out the savings of thousands, from the working public to the landed elite. The crisis was a threat to the state because the South Sea Company's debt was tied directly to the British government's own sovereign debt. If the national credit failed, the Crown would lose the ability to fund the military or manage its global interests. The King's speech reflects the urgency of a government attempting to prevent a total insolvency of state power. Following the King's mandate, the government began aggressive legal proceedings against the individuals who managed the South Sea Company. The Mercury reports that several directors and officers of the company were taken into custody. The dispatches allege that several great men were accused of receiving bribes from the company to facilitate the scheme. As these arrests began in London, an international search was underway for another key figure in the era's financial scandals. The dispatches note that Mr. Laws has fled Paris, escaping toward Venice or Rome. John Law was the architect of the Mississippi bubble in France, a speculative collapse that devastated the French economy in a manner very similar to the South Sea crisis. While the financial markets were in turmoil, the news cycle also brought reports of biological and natural disasters from across Europe. One dispatch notes that the plague in Marseille has finally abated, following an outbreak that left the city's streets filled with victims. These reports of financial crimes and mass casualty events were presented as parallel developments, requiring an international effort to track both the movement of fugitives and the spread of disease. Further north, massive floods hit the Low Countries. The report from Holland describes incredible damage, noting the loss of people and livestock. Simultaneously, a report from France states the city of Rennes was, for the most part, destroyed by fire. For readers in Philadelphia, these updates were vital intelligence. A flood in Holland or a fire in a major French city meant immediate disruptions to trade and changes in market prices. The briefing then shifts from natural disasters to military dispatches from the African theater. The paper reports that the Spanish Marquis de Lede has secured a victory in a series of battles against the Moors. This victory was a significant development in the Mediterranean balance of power, a region where British and Spanish interests frequently overlapped. The format of the newspaper delivers these reports: massive loss of life in floods and military victories, in consecutive dry sentences. In this era, environmental disasters and distant wars were consumed as parallel data points, appearing side by side on the page as factors affecting global stability. As the Crown addressed the crisis in London, it also began a process of reorganization within the American colonies. The dispatches in the Mercury trace a centralization of military and political power, with the crown moving to secure its frontiers. General Francis Nicholson is appointed Commander-in-Chief of South Carolina. He embarked with 100 soldiers, with orders for 1,100 more to follow, specifically to garrison the southern frontiers. The newspaper also relays a report that Pennsylvania is being surrendered to the crown. This included a financial arrangement where William Penn's heirs keep rents for lands already granted, while ceding political control. Similar shifts occurred in the Caribbean, with a new series of naval and gubernatorial appointments. The Duke of Portland was sent with a naval squadron to serve as the Viceroy of the English West Indies. In the same week, the Mercury reported on the financial instability in London. It documented these major steps toward the militarization of the colonies and the absorption of private holdings into royal control. The Mercury then narrows its focus from imperial movements down to the local streets of Philadelphia. A Supreme Court grand jury report concerns a citizen named Henry Nelson. He was indicted for the crime of perjury. The final update states he was granted leave to seek bail, but instead thought fit to move off and could not be found. Nelson had successfully evaded the local court, echoing the international flight of John Waugh reported earlier in the paper. The American Weekly Mercury connects the macro and the micro. In April 1721, whether you were an elite director in London or a citizen in Philadelphia, the columns of the newspaper show that it was a notable time for those facing the law to flee the jurisdiction.
The Daily Dispatch, history in print, no